Welcome to the Choice Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Nastasha McKeon, founder and CEO of Choice Juicery, author of Plant Food as Medicine, and naturally a health, wellness, and mindfulness enthusiast. I believe that happiness is a choice, and I built my company upon this ethos. This show is a platform where we will discuss all things health, wellness, and mindfulness in hopes of inspiring you further on your journey. We will be sharing inspiring stories, health, wellness, and mindfulness hacks, as well as anything else pertaining to living your best choice life. My hope is that you may hear something on every episode of this podcast that will genuinely be of value in your life. Welcome back to the Choice Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Nastasha McKeon, founder and CEO of Choice Juicery, author of Plant Food as Medicine, and naturally a health and wellness enthusiast. This episode, as well as every other episode, is sponsored by Choice Juicery. If you want to support this show, you can do so by visiting us online at choicejuicery.com, where you can buy yourself a copy of my cookbook with over 100 different plant-based and gluten-free recipes. Also, we have a full line of products that we're shipping on there, everything from our gluten-free bread to our incredible nut butters. We actually just launched a new nut butter this week, chocolate chip cookie cashew butter. It's just to die for. So you got to give that a try. If you are in Southern California, we have 7 locations here, 6 in San Diego and 1 in San Clemente. So you can visit us and support us that way as well. We appreciate your support. And of course, we appreciate you listening into the show. Today's guest, Brandon D'Ambra, is a friend that I connected with through mutual friends. And I got really excited when I heard what he was up to in the sobriety world. Those of you who follow me know that I'm on a sobriety path myself. I decided to break up with alcohol almost 2 years ago. July will be 2 years for me. And I always struggled with the word sober and sobriety. I grew up, I was an NA kid. My mom struggled with drugs growing up, so she bounced in and out of NA and AA. I never really identified with the word sobriety because I never felt like I had a problem, so to speak. I never felt like I wasn't an alcoholic. I didn't have, I thought that sobriety was for people that, were addicts, and I never identified as an addict. I just decided I didn't want to drink alcohol anymore or incorporate it into my life. I listened to a lot of the Huberman Lab podcasts. He put out some really good information about the negative impacts of alcohol on your body and brain. Also read an incredible book called We Are the Luckiest about this woman's sobriety journey that I was turned on to through the Mark Rose podcast. And I was just at a time in my life where it just didn't make sense anymore and felt out of alignment. So I stopped drinking, and I kind of felt like I didn't really fit in anywhere with it. Like I had my friends that still drink, which no shame there. Sobriety is not for everybody, but for me, it was the right thing. And I also didn't really identify with AA or the sobriety stuff. So I just kind of felt, a little lost and didn't have a lot of people to connect with. And Brandon created this brand called Pink 7. He co-created it. He's a co-founder, and it is a sober curious brand. They do apparel, they do events, they do all kinds of stuff, but their mission is to redefine sobriety for this new generation. And I absolutely love that. Obviously, I connect with that from what I just shared. And, he had a background in startups. He graduated from USC, and he was working with startups and living the life up in Northern California. And he decided to get sober, which led him to Encinitas, California, near me. And from there, he co-founded this brand, Pink 7. They do all these incredible events, everything from like pickleball to group runs to like really formal, fun, poker nights, and just all kinds of really cool, creative, unique ways to get people together without booze. I think that's one of the things that I struggle with the most, being on the sober path and trying to connect with other people. Like, what do I do on a Friday night or a Saturday night? And it seems like it's commonplace to go have drinks. Then when you're dating, let's go get a drink. It's like there's not a lot of stuff, I think, to do if you're not in the, AA community that surrounds like sobriety. And so it's cool. It's a sober curious brand. It's like no judgments. It's like, this is a sober event, but you don't have to be in AA or you don't have to be sober person to be able to participate in these events. So it's very inclusive, and I love that. I think it gives people an opportunity to see that you can have an incredible time and you don't need to have booze or, anything else. You can just have fun hanging out with one another and connecting in a positive way. So I love what he's up to. I love his his story of sobriety. So I wanted to get him on and hear from him about why he, created Pink Seven and share his story with you guys. And I hope you enjoy it. I am blabbering on at this point, so let's just get him on here. Brandon, what's up? Thanks so much for joining me on the Choice Lifestyle podcast today.
Yeah, Nastasha, thanks for having me. Stoked to be here.
Absolutely. So, gosh, so many reasons why I wanted to have you on the podcast today. I think the number one reason why I'm most excited is I love your mission with Pink Seven around, framing sobriety. And I really wanted to lean into that. I shared a little bit of my story in the intro about, getting sober and getting off of alcohol and not really feeling like I had a place because I never felt like I was an addict and I never felt like I belonged to, the sober community. But I also was choosing not to drink anymore, and it felt like there was no place for me. And one of the things that you said when we first met was like it's sober curious brand, and I love that because I think it's an inclusive way to go about doing these events where I don't have to identify as somebody who's completely sober, and I can also identify as somebody who's completely sober, and I can still come to these events and be a part of this brand, if you will, this lifestyle brand. So I love that. I want to hear about the inspiration that led you to creating Pink Seven. But before we even go there, let's just start from the beginning with your story of going into like what led you into sobriety and then ultimately led you to creating Pink Seven, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I would love to do that. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with what what we're trying to do and what we're doing because we learn that there's so many people out there, the silent majority that are living some sort of sober life. And the moment we start to put some very strict definition on it, you start to prevent people from being open about it, or you start to we put ourselves in a box, and then you don't reach the masses. And we want to make sure we reach everyone and connect to everyone because like it says in our mission, it doesn't even mention sober. It says we want to inspire people to reach their potential and find true happiness. And that was my experience and everyone on our team's experience in whether they got sober because they were in recovery or they just wanted to stop drinking and just be their best self. A little bit about me. So, yeah, I was born into a huge Italian family, the oldest of eight, and I had a great life. I mean, my family was great. Life was very good. I was always very strict around getting my work done. A lot of pressures on being performing. As I started to get into school and all that, I always put that as a priority. But I was also introduced to alcohol. I found, one of the things I've always described me as I was growing up was I always felt less than. I was always trying to fit in. I never really felt comfortable with who I was. And I think once I had my first drink of alcohol, I was like, wait, this gave me some relief. I feel good. I can talk openly and be more comfortable. I still kept school and grades and all that a priority because I think I was more terrified of like disappointing my
Mm-hmm.
family in that sense. And for a while, I was able to manage that. In fact, like I was able to get good grades and get into college. Went in college, still maintained grades to graduate and do all that. Um, it was always centered around getting through the week, passing the test, doing the internship, just to party on the weekend. Like my
Wow.
priorities were all mixed up.
Yeah. Can I
Um,
ask you a question on that?
yeah,
When you say like the struggle to, the struggle that we all have, right? To fit in, to feel like we belong, to like, where do you think that came from? I know with me, I've always felt because of the way that I grew up, completely opposite to you, disconnected from my family, and no connection, no community, no good, positive, healthy examples, lack of love, affection, all that stuff. So it's always interesting to me when someone from a different path experiences the same thing in childhood. Where do you think that came from for you? What do you think drove that, feeling that you had where you didn't feel like you fit in or you belonged in that way?
I think for me, I let fear control me to a whole nother level
Mm.
than a lot of other people. And because I let this fear control me, I never threw myself into situations that made me a little uncomfortable where I could grow from.
Wow. That's powerful. And so
Because
many
I've
of us
learned,
do
like,
that.
yeah, exactly. And now it's like because I've had mentors and was finally willing to get to a place where, hey, Brandon, you don't know everything. Like there's people that have
Mm,
more experience that you could learn from, and taking the actions based off the advice they've given me or their
right.
experiences. It's like, hey, when you feel that fear or that discomfort, like maybe that's more of a green light to like go throw yourself into it. And when I was younger, I never did that. I literally see something that I fear or was uncomfortable with and would go the opposite way.
Wow, that's wild. I can from experience of raising kids because I have an almost 21-year-old, I have an 18-year-old, and then I have a 7-year-old. So I have a small case study, of like kids and seeing how prominent that is when they come up against something difficult that's uncomfortable, just like not even trying because of the fear of failure, not even like taking that first step because of the fear of rejection. And I feel like as a kid, I didn't struggle so much with that, but as an adult, we develop a healthy ego. And then it's like having to do something like forever. I wanted to do a dance class and I wouldn't do it because I was afraid of looking dumb or afraid of like, being
Yeah.
embarrassed or being a beginner or like, I don't want to suck at something as an adult, like it's okay when you're a kid, but as an adult, I'm like, no. So I relate to it, but then also watching my kids grow up and seeing how as a parent, you have to really try to push your kids through that barrier because they don't naturally know. So many of us are wired to shy away out of fear of rejection. And I'm sure that comes from back in like ancient society, right? Like we didn't want to be outcasted. We wanted to belong. And you're afraid to make a mistake because then you might not fit in, you might not belong. So better to not even try than to try and fail and then not belong, right? In some ways.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a really cool place that to get to when you've learned, like I've accepted I'm always going to have fears, but I've learned that facing them and experiencing them is the ultimate pathway to becoming a better person or a better version of myself.
Absolutely. I was just saying this on another episode with one of my favorite yoga teachers, but the cave you fear to enter holds all the treasure you seek. It's like the very thing that we're afraid to do actually is where all the juicy stuff is. All the good stuff in life is actually in that cave that we don't want to enter. It's like, I'm afraid. But then
Yeah.
you go and you push through that and you see that, oh, people still love me when I look like a dork on the dance floor. People still love me. And it's like you actually get to feel more seen and more loved when you're actually being fully who you are versus hiding parts of yourself out of fear of rejection or what have you. Okay, so take us back
Yeah.
to you left off where it was still like work hard and then living for the weekend, which how many people listening to this can probably relate to that experience at one point of their lives or another, or maybe are there right now where it's like you get through Monday to Friday and it's like Friday at 5 o'clock, it's happy hour somewhere, like let's go, it's time to like now go drink and party and blow off all the steam from the week, time to go out and have a good time, and people live for the weekend. It's very common. So you were kind of in that experience yourself. Take us back there and what happened
Yeah,
from
it's
there.
that whole work hard, play hard mindset has been ingrained in for me from a combination of family, friends, but also society. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
alcohol companies, the TV shows. I was actually one of my friends was put on that show Workaholics, and I literally looked over to him and I said, God, it's crazy how much of what we were taught was centered around just get to work so then you could go home, drink and smoke or whatever it was. And it's like, God,
Mm-hmm.
that seems so gross to me today and just so
Totally.
debilitating to what I want to accomplish.
But
Um,
so
but I
normalized
see
in
that now
society,
today.
so normalized, as you said, like it's in the shows we watch, it's the music we listen to, it's like it's so normalized. It's the ads for the alcohol companies. It's like everyone wants you to buy into that reality that that's totally normal and totally healthy to live that way, at the expense of your longevity, at the expense of your well-being, sometimes at the expense of your personal relationships. Like so many sacrifices you're making to have that lifestyle without even realizing it because it's totally socially acceptable in our society today, sadly.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I'm thinking of like of the whole ad with Corona. It says find your beach and there's a Corona. I always think like, what does Corona have to do with me finding my beach? I found so many beautiful beaches now that I'm sober, not drinking. I don't even enjoy
So,
the
and I
beach
remember
once I'm
them.
drinking.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
remember them and I'm fully present in the moment. And and I don't need like the hair of the dog that bit me while I'm laying on that beautiful beach because I didn't go too hard last night. Yeah, totally. That's wild. Okay. So
Yeah.
sorry, I keep interrupting, but like I'm
No,
so
I love it.
on the
Yeah, I
same page
love
as you.
covering all this stuff. Yeah. Um, and then this is where like my whole idea of what I thought would make me happy, where I started
Mm,
to really see that I was wrong all along. I had finished school, I had got this job, in Silicon Valley that I thought was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, getting paid very well for my age. I had the girlfriend. I had a beautiful place in San Francisco. Here I was like, I'm not happy. And I was prescribed Xanax for anxiety. And I
Wow.
started experimenting with pills that people around me were doing it, people I worked with, older guys who I looked up to in the industry. And I started to take that. And in the beginning, it was like, oh, this is making me even better at my job. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as fearful. I can do all these things. And I truly believed that first. And again, this kind of plays with
Yeah.
me not believing in myself, but I truly believe like, wait, this is making me better. Like if I take this before this meeting with this client or do
Mm-hmm.
this at this dinner, I'm better. I'm more fun. I'm more outgoing. And
Yeah.
it was unbelievable how convinced I was by that until that ultimately became my demise. And that stuff wasn't helping. And I realized, wow, I'm here doing this. And I've thought all along, I've got everything I thought I wanted. All these
Mm-hmm.
exterior things were just all BS for me
Totally.
in my experience. But that's where I really started to be like, wow, this is where it started to be, okay, Brandon, this is what you thought would make you happy. And this is what is the reality. You're taking drugs to get through work. And ultimately, the thing you thought was making you better is making you worse. And now putting your whole career uh, into, into jeopardy.
Totally. So many interesting parts to all of what you just said. Part number one being that, you're struggling and you go for help, and the help is, here, take this pill. Not like, let's look at the problem and figure out, like, because to me it's like, if I'm unhappy, if I have anxiety, if I'm depressed, if I have these things, that's a symptom of a bigger problem. But instead of looking at what the problem is and addressing the real problem, we're like, here is a prescription to cover that symptom that you're experiencing so you can keep living the life that you're living that's leading you to feeling the way you're feeling. And now you're a forever patient because you're going to need those pills, because we're not actually getting to the root of the problem, which is, oh, it turns out I was sold the lie. And I know that experience too. But my story, it's like, okay, when I get the house and, the kids and the picket fence and the car and the boat, like, then I'll be happy. It's like, and then you get there and you're like, wait, it's like, I'm actually, I don't feel happy or fulfilled. Like, wait a minute. Now, like, I got there, and whatever that success looks like too, it's different for everybody based on, socioeconomic background and childhoods and things like that. But like, you get to that place that you thought, once I got there, once I got that house, once I
Mm-hmm.
got that car, once I got that thing, as you said, exterior
Yeah.
things, and then you find that that's all empty, it's all in vain, and then of course you're not happy. So it's like, well, let's then reevaluate the life. Like, what would it take to make you happy? What do you love? What do you want to, like, where do you want to be spending your energy and your time? And nobody asks those questions, because that's abnormal in our society today, to ask those questions, those deeper questions, because you went to college, you paid a lot of money to go to college and to get this career, and you've got the career, and like, you've got it all figured out. Just take these pills and this will solve everything. And it's heartbreaking. And then those pills oftentimes lead to exactly what you said, your demise. That prescription,
Mm-hmm.
that you're taking, that's supposed to be helping you, is actually hurting you so much worse, and then ultimately leads to your demise. So it's just crazy how things are designed, working against us so much. You really have to be your own advocate. You really have to have that awareness that we're not really taught. These days I feel like the younger generation is so lucky, because they're getting so much more of this, like my kids, my 21-year-old, my 18-year-old, like, they have a very emotionally intelligent, not to toot my own horn or anything, but like, mother who's like, how are you feeling about that? And like, we talk about feelings, and we talk about, there's like, that's normal in our household, but that wasn't normal, I think, in my generation. I know there might be a little age gap between us. I don't know about your generation, but for sure it wasn't normal in my generation. Talking about feelings, talking about passion was like, no, like, it's about succeed, like, what do I need to do to
Yep.
succeed? And we don't care about your feelings, don't care about your passion. Like, you can't do that for work. And you, like, like, those things weren't, that just wasn't a part of our growing up anyways, at least mine. So yeah, so many things there. So carry on. What came next for you?
Yes.
We've gotten to
So,
your
of
demise.
course,
Lead us into that a little bit, because I feel like we brushed over that when we were getting to know each other. Like, the pills, and then that led to my demise, led me to Encinitas. But I want to hear more about that. Most people say, like, they don't get help until they hit their rock bottom. Like, what was rock bottom for you? What did that look like for you?
yeah, of course. And I think it's important in my growth and everything to be my most authentic self and get vulnerable. A lot of these things I used to be embarrassed about or be like, hey, I can't share this with people because then they're going to create this judgment towards me. And
Totally.
but what I've learned is that that doesn't do me any good, and I want
Mm-mm.
people to get to know me on the real me. And from there, it's again, it's going back to like what I can do anything but to really look at myself. It's not the job, it's this job. It's let me try a different industry. That was the
Mm-hmm.
next move. Because I eventually had um, lost my job in tech, and so I majored in real estate finance in college. I was like, let me get into real estate. I'd switched it up, and again, doing no work on myself. Again, still finding myself in the same sort of issues in that same hole. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, maybe it's not the industry. Maybe it's the geography. Where am I? The location. I'm in San Francisco. Let me go down south a little bit and went to Los Angeles. Not making my way to North County just yet, but again, avoiding looking at myself and like
Mm-hmm.
really facing me. And then I think where that ended up like playing, very straight up is that the drugs had stopped working. They were a good way to escape and forget about, the things I had lost on this journey in the beginning. Once the drugs stopped working, that got really scary. It's where it really got dark
Mm-hmm.
because I was able to escape and avoid things. But then where I had ended up was in and out of detoxes because I could not. I want to get it. I want to get clean, sober. Then I wouldn't want to do the difficult, all the feelings and emotions. The physical pain is one thing, that the feelings and emotions come back, and I just want to escape again. It took a numerous amount of attempts and detox, but really where I was in a hotel room by LAX, and I wanted to die, but I was too
Wow.
scared to kill myself. And for the first time in my life, I was willing to pick up the phone and be like, hey, put my ego aside and ask for help. And it's amazing how many people that were willing to help once I was really just ready to get honest. And like I said, that my ego has been so telling me, oh, you don't want anybody to know. Keep this hidden from everybody.
Uh-huh.
No, and I thought
Yep.
I was fooling everybody for so long. And everyone's like, my friends were like, dude, we've been waiting for this call. My dad was
Wow.
just like, you don't know. And it's amazing how much my mind would create these tricks and lie to myself. it was it's scary because you set out, like, I set out on, in life with all these morals I had, and these standards I set for
Yeah.
myself. And the worse my life had gotten, and the more I was, drinking and drugging,
Mm-hmm.
those standards and my morals just started to decline, and what I was willing to settle for
Totally.
just became so low. And it was so sad because for someone who had such high aspirations and goals, and just the rules of being a good person,
Yeah.
how that had gone, how that had lowered over time.
Yeah,
That was, a scary
totally.
place to be.
Totally. And it's crazy because, like, it could happen to anybody. And that's the thing, it's like it can happen to anybody, no matter your age, your background. Like, it can really happen to anybody. I was re listening to the Huberman Lab podcast about the effects that alcohol has on your body. And he was talking about the people that are like
Mhm.
predispositioned to become alcoholics, for example. And he talks about, he's like, he's not encouraging you to go out and drink to do this test, but you kind of know if you've ever been a drinker, like, okay, do I get energized with that drink three, or do I start like getting sleepy and going to bed? And he says, if you get energized by drink three, and the more you drink, the more energized you get, likely you have a genetic disposition to alcoholism. And if you've ever blacked out before and things like that, and it's like, you don't have to have necessarily like alcoholic parents. You don't have to have a bad upbringing. You don't have to have, divorced parents. It can literally happen to anybody. It can be genuinely like, I got an injury. I've had friends that had great families, great upbringings. They played like, college sports. They got injured. They were prescribed a medication, and then boom, like, they became addicted to pills, which led to drug abuse and other things. So it's like, it's to me, it's like Russian roulette when you're messing with substances, because it's like, you got the barrels, got that one bullet in the chamber, and you're just like, click click click, was it this one, was it this one, was it that one? It's like, it's just, is it really worth, sometimes, like, I wonder, like, is it really worth like taking that test? Like, is it worth trying that thing? Is it worth, and I know we all have our stories and our journeys with it, but it's just like, God, how much pain and suffering could we save people from if that wasn't just such a normal thing to do, to go out and party? And like you were saying earlier, I related a lot about like wanting to fit in and belong. I grew up in a really drug infested environment. I never wanted to do drugs. I never wanted to drink or smoke or do any of that stuff. I was totally anti, but as I got older, it's like I wanted to fit in, I wanted to belong, and I was always like this straight lace, like, I'd get made fun of. I mean, this isn't that long ago, actually. I'm kind of like almost embarrassed to admit, but like I was at a party, like a friends gathering. This was maybe like 5, 6, 7 years ago, and I was in a group of girls, and they were talking, and they started talking about Molly, and I was like, "Oh, who's Molly?" Like thinking like it was another friend, and they were like all laughed at me, and I felt so embarrassed because I was like, I didn't know like that was the name of a drug. And so I'm like naive in
Yeah.
that regard, like I've never done that sort of stuff. And it was always something that I was embarrassed about. So like drinking was one thing that I could like participate in to feel like I belonged and to feel like I fit in. But it's funny because it's like if we have to do something to fit in and belong, maybe we're like not in the right, environment. Maybe we're not in the right crowd, to begin with. But so yeah, thank you for sharing all that. Okay, so you're in LA and you hit this rock bottom. You reach out for help. Where's the transition to Encinitas, and how is Pink Seven born?
Yes. So finally, on this, reach for help, I was recommended to go to rehab, and where I ended up was a rehab in Del Mar. And I had every intention to just go do my time in the rehab and then go back to Los Angeles, again, kind of just acting on my own ideas.
Mhm.
And then in rehab, I started to really open up to my therapist and started getting involved in the AA program in there. And what I had found and what I was kind of learned from other people who had had success getting better and getting their lives, improving drastically were folks that were saying, hey, like, take some recommendations, take the next suggestion. Don't just act on your first thought and go do what you want to do. And like the first recommendation was like, stick around here, like go to a sober living, um, and get involved in a community, all that stuff. So I started to take these suggestions, and it was like, wow, like when I had more reinforcement to continue taking these suggestions, and being open to other people's experiences, and I started to see my life get better, and so I just kind of continued on this path. What what then changed was that, okay, hey, like I'm learning that my life is so much better sober. I want to have fun, meeting more people. We're looking for things
Mhm.
to do. You made a good point when you were talking about worrying about looking stupid like in dance class or something. Like one of the biggest things I learned was like when you getting to meet people is kind of like learning something, or looking stupid in front of them, because then you can bond over it. So we had like started doing like little events like volleyball and pickleball, and it's like when you throw a bunch of people in a room and just say, hey, just talk, it's a little more hard and awkward at first, but it's like, hey,
Mhm.
play a game of volleyball, learn this sport together, and build like some sort of rapport with one another. We started to see like, wow, this is very effective in bringing people together, and people love
Absolutely.
it. And so, well, so we started putting on these events, and through that we started to create a community. The community continued to grow, and people are like, hey, like there's something here. Like you guys are building something that's special, and it's helping people, whether they're in recovery, whether they're just open to the sober idea, whether they're just drinking less or they're sober curious,
Yeah.
or even if they're supporting someone on the sober journey.
Totally. You create like
And then
a platform for them and an environment, I being going on the sober journey,
Yeah,
for some
exactly.
people they can like drink less, for some people they can like,
And
oh,
then we
I'll
came
just
up with the how we came up with the name. So what Pink Seven? Oh, we're talking.
that's okay. That's okay. For some people, they can just drink less, and other people, it's like that doesn't work for them. They just need to not drink. And so I love what you were saying, how it's like for people, even supporting people on a sober journey, like, someone's getting sober, they can't oftentimes especially in the beginning of their sobriety journey, can't and don't want to be around people drinking because that makes it harder for them. So it's like a place where they can go and they can invite friends who want to support them in that journey, and they can go do fun things, because it's tough to do fun things when you are one of the few people in your social circle that's not drinking. Oftentimes anything you do, it's drinking. It's like beach day, everyone's got drinks. It's a barbecue, everyone's drinking. It's a birthday party, everyone's drinking. It's a wedding, everyone's drinking. It's a comedy show, everyone's drinking. It's like everything we do socially, it seems to revolve around drinking. And so to be able to still be social and not have drinks, and of course you can choose to go to any of those things and not drink, but I think it's nice to go somewhere where you don't feel like the oddball, where everyone else is doing this too at this place and at this time, and it's the cool thing to do. That's like I just love it so much. And I agree with what people are telling you, that you've got something special there, because I don't think a lot of people are doing that. And there's a clear demand for it. Go to any Bevmo today and go down like the non-alcoholic aisles. Like, 10 years ago, it was empty. Maybe like, some alcohol-free beers, but like outside of that, it was like empty aisles. And now those aisles are just loaded with all these like really cool like spirits that are alcohol free, and really cool wines that are alcohol free. It's like clearly there's a growing demand for people who are not wanting to incorporate alcohol in their lives, or wanting to incorporate it a whole lot less. And so you guys are creating like the social aspect to that, because who wants to go home and drink some non-alcoholic wine alone? It's like you want to go and be social, you want to go do fun things, so you're creating community around it, and I really love that. And now the name.
Yeah,
Yes, I
thank you.
love the story about the name was really cool, because it was something new to me, because I've never spent any time in any of the sobriety circles. And so I didn't know anything about what the name meant or anything. And I think that's a cool share. So share about that a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So what Pink Seven means is it's a pink cloud in seventh heaven, and it's the highest form of a pink cloud. And a pink cloud is the experience of bliss and happiness you get when you get sober, or when you remove alcohol and drugs from the equation. And I think that true happiness piece is so important, because like, our mission, like we said, is like inspire people to reach their potential and find that true happiness. Like our baseline, like sober is our normal. Like it's when you're truly happy, finding that true happiness, you're not relying on any substance or drink. And that's what we want to do, is provide these experiences, whether they're through events, content we post. And then we also are so excited about the pride people feel about this movement now. It's not a stigma, it's becoming this status.
Mm-hmm.
And you could go anywhere, in the country, you see someone in a Yankees hat, they're like proud to be a Yankees fan. And it just goes without saying. And our goal is to be, you go somewhere, anywhere in the world, and you see someone with Pink Seven or our logo. It's like, hey, it's that if you know vibe. And
I feel
yeah,
that
I
way
love it.
totally.
Yeah, yeah.
I got a couple of hats from you, and I got a sweater, which, by the way, is the most comfortable sweater I've ever owned in my life. It is just like the
I love
comfy.
it.
It is so nice. Anyways, anytime I wear it, I feel I have this like little grin on my face. Like, I don't know if you know what I know, but like I'm in the club. Like it's got a cool feel to it,
Yes.
and it's so true. It's exactly what you said. It's like it's not the stigma of like sober. I remember I listened to this podcast. The girl, she wrote a book. I can't remember her name right now, but she wrote a book called "We Are the Luckiest," which was really heart wrenching, beautiful, painful, all the things. But I had heard her initially on, I think it was the Mark Grove podcast. Is he the relationship guy? I think it was Mark Grove's podcast, but I could be wrong. Anyways, he had interviewed her on this podcast, and I really liked her story, and I loved how open and honest and vulnerable she was. Kind of what you were saying earlier about like sometimes you don't want to share that stuff because you don't want to be judged for who you were in the past. But man, she got real
Hmm.
raw on there and shared some really dark stuff about her journey with sobriety. And I had so much respect for her. I was like, who is this woman? I need to find her. I need to know more about her. I got her book, We're the Luckiest. And that book was such a wonderful, amazing read. But hearing her story of trying to get sober, and she had a real problem. Like, I mean, it was destroying her life and her relationships. And she was a mother, and it was a really painful journey for her. and hard to read for me because I had a mom who was an addict and I suffered a lot in my childhood having a mom who struggled with addiction. But I remember reading her story and then her talking about like when she would go to a meeting or when she would try to get sober, it was like the stigma of it. It's like I don't identify with this, with these people, with this. Like she couldn't wrap her brain around this like sobriety thing. It was such a that word was so triggering as it was for me even. And so again, I just like that the fact that you've done something where you've made it cool. You've made it like I feel that way in with choice with the health and wellness movement. It's like I made it cool to eat healthy. I made it cool to drink juice. Like, in some ways I'm like proud of that, not that that was solely me, but there's a lot of people making it cool. But it's like it's become a
Yeah.
cool thing now. It's not just this like hippie granola thing. It's like it's cool to drink cold pressed juice. It's cool to take care of your body. It's cool to eat organic. Didn't know
Oh
it
yeah.
wasn't always that way. And now I feel like you're kind of doing the same thing with sobriety and taking care of your body in that way and respecting your body in that way and making it fun while you're doing it. So I have mad respect for what you're doing. And the little logo, explain that.
So it's a semicolon and a parentheses. I wish I had it on. It's a
I know.
semicolon and a parenthesis and then another colon. And when you flip it to one side, it's a smiling face winking at you, or if you flip the other side, it's a sad face. So it's like, hey, you get to choose your perspective, and it's up to you. We love that's a lot. Yeah, that's on a lot of our stuff, and it gives. It's like how you go wake up like with in gratitude or not. Like it's like I can
Totally.
forget where my life is have just gotten today versus where it was when I first got sober. And it's like, God, Brandon, how can you even start to forget how grateful you should be? Because if you look back, before you got sober, when you walked on this journey, what you didn't have, who didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to be associated with you, who didn't trust you,
Mm-hmm.
and now all those things and so much more. And it's like, wow. So it's like when I go into every day, it's like, hey, I can make the best out of this, or not. And that logo really is an example of and a reminder to all of us on how we could go about our days. Plus, it looks pretty good too.
It looks so cool. But yeah, also, yeah, it's such a good reminder. At Choice, our biggest motto is choose happiness. Happiness is a choice. And so it's kind of like that. You get to choose. And even when you say like your perspective too, like that's such a big thing. It's not just about choosing happiness or choosing to be happy or choosing to be grateful. It's also choosing to reframe the way we're thinking about things. And going back to the book I was just talking about, where at one point in her journey, she's describing like how boring and horrible of a life it would be if she couldn't drink. Like if she couldn't drink, like it was just like this horrible, boring existence that she didn't want to live. Like she couldn't imagine living that way. She'd rather not live because for her, drinking provided so much fun and so much joy and so much connection and all of that. And so she just was so boring. But then at the end of the book, she's sitting at dinner with her daughter and she's talking about her beautiful, boring little life, but in such a beautiful way. And I relate to that so much. It's like on a Friday night, sometimes I'm just like sitting at home reading a book. And it's like, but at one time that was like boring. I'm not out with friends. I'm not being social. I'm not like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's like, it's a perspective shift. Like it's boring or it's like, it's beautiful and it's present and it's honoring. And now I have the choice of going to Pink 7 events too. So I don't just have to be sitting at home on a Friday night. But yeah, I love it. So cool.
Yes, I know you do.
I know I need to get myself to one. I was supposed to be at that
Yeah.
last one, but I'm definitely signing up for that next one. I don't think you've announced any details for the next
Good. We'd love to
one.
have you.
Have you announced any details for the
N-
next one? Tell us a little bit about
no,
what I know you
not.
mentioned, like pickleball. I know you mentioned there's like runs, there's all this like beach volleyball, things like this. Tell us about some of those other like the event you had last was it 2 weeks ago? Now 3 weeks ago now. Tell us about that one. I want people to get paint the picture of like what these events look like. Because sometimes I feel like people are
Yeah, of
like, what
course.
is an event where you're not drinking? Like you're going out at night and it's like there's no cocktails. Like people are terrified of that because it's hard to connect if you're so used to connecting with alcohol. It's like people have that social anxiety and you're using alcohol as a crutch often to get through some of that stuff. Like, oh, I'll just go have a drink and it'll put my nerves at ease and I'll be able to connect with people. And so what do you say to, about these events and how do people connect at these events without having that crutch?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, we'll always have like our weekly events and activities that are pickleball, yoga, Pilates, meditations, because we always want to provide people the opportunity to always continue to be building community and always have somewhere to go that's consistent. But then we've also put on big, more upscale events. And with those, it's like we want to give the feedback is when people want the opportunity to dress up and people want the opportunity to do these things. Like I describe it like this. There's all these things we think we can't do or we shouldn't be doing when we got sober or when we get sober or if alcohol isn't involved. But our goal at this event was to provide like an experience where people could get there and we had mocktails and non-alcoholic drinks. We had casino tables, we had a DJ, we had dancing, we had a big backdrop so people could take pictures of themselves when they got in. And I remember yelling on on somebody's story because they were asking me to say something. I was like, all the things we thought we couldn't do when we got sober, we can do, and we're doing them here tonight. And it was great. People got dressed up and came and got to meet people, dance, try different mocktails, and then you know play blackjack and roulette and have a good time, have a normal night. And the
I
feedback
love that.
was it's true. People were like, God, I was so nervous. Or, I had anxiety to come here, but I'm so
Mm-hmm.
happy I did because again, that's like my brain. What it does is like it starts to put expectations or tell us what the outcomes already are before we get there. And it's like as long as you go into somewhere open minded, and then our goal is to like make sure we get some good content so we could share this with everyone else. So for the next one, they can see like, hey, this isn't some
Yeah.
lame, boring sober event.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I always think like to me, it's an opportunity, an invitation to like get curious with yourself. Like when you think of an event like that and you think like, oh, how boring. Like there's not going to be any booze there. I'm not going there. It's like get curious
Yeah.
about that story that you're telling yourself. Why is it boring? You know, I won't call anyone out, but I have somebody in my family who's like, I used to before went completely sober. I used to do like sober October challenges or dry January challenges. I would do that stuff all the time. And I'd always invite this person and be like, you should join me. And they'd be like, oh, that, I couldn't know. Like, it's terrible. You know, it's like this. And it's like, if it seems
Yeah.
that like daunting to you, like that's an invitation to look at that. Like, why is that so impossible? Why is that so, scary? Why is it so bad to try to dance when you're sober? Like that was a story I used to tell. I can't dance if I'm not drinking. Ooh, no way. Oh my God. I need at least
Hmm.
2 drink minimum to get me on a dance floor. That was the story I
Yeah.
used to tell. And so, and same thing, like dating, not drinking is like a whole new, that's like a game changer. You really get to know who somebody truly is and how you really feel about them and how attracted to them you really are when you're not incorporating like, cocktails at, first, second, third, dates. Like so many times that's how people date, especially in Southern California. It's like a thing. Like you go, like, you want to go grab a drink? You want to go grab a drink? It's like cool, but you're
Yep.
you're not really like seeing how your nervous system feels around this person, and that's a big one for me. So like learning how to date sober was so interesting. I'd like go on a first date and I'd have so much anxiety where I'd normally reach for a glass of wine to like put my nerves at ease, and then leaning into that and being like, why do I have the urge to have a glass of wine right now? Like getting curious with myself. Why do I feel like I need that? I'm like, oh, I feel anxious. Okay, can I be with that? Like, I want to like loosen up. Like, okay, can I just loosen up? Like, I'm learning how to do those things without the crutch. The thing with alcohol and these things are you're not learning anything new. You're using something kind of like going back to your story with the Xanax to treat the symptoms, right? You're treating the symptoms of your stress and anxiety and what have you, but you're not getting better. So alcohol is the same thing. It's like if I'm using alcohol to dance, if I'm using alcohol to feel comfortable in social settings where I don't feel comfortable, if I'm using alcohol in that way, I'm never getting better at those things. I'm always going to need alcohol to do those things. Whereas when I can lean into that discomfort, get curious about it, and go on that date and go dancing and go to that Pink Seven event without those things, then it's like, wow, I'm learning how to be in these situations. And all of a sudden, it's like a couple years in, I don't even think about alcohol when I go dancing. I don't even think about having a drink when I go on a first date. I don't even think about that stuff because I don't need it anymore because I got better at those things because I didn't have the crutch, that I was using in the past. So I think it's an awesome opportunity. If that's triggering you at all, I invite you to take a look at that.
Yeah, you said it. You said it perfect. I mean, perfect. That's how I describe it to when I'm explaining my experience or when I'm trying to get somebody, encourage someone to throw themselves out there because it's like I thought I was this better person on a date or something drinking, which I was completely wrong about. But also, like you said, the daily growth I continue to set for myself every day because I'm not cutting myself back 2 steps by going out and drinking one night, or like completely cutting my emotions and brain off to growth and
Mm-hmm.
like new experiences. It's crazy what, what transpires over a course of a period of time where you try all these new experiences or difficult, uncomfortable things without any sort of crutch, because you're just
Yep.
you're continuing to grow.
100%. I love that. And it's like, has anybody ever in their entire life woken up and said, man, I really regret not drinking last night? Has that like ever happened in the history of ever? I don't know anyone who's ever said that, but I do know a whole hell of a lot of people, myself included, that have woken up and been like, man, I really regret that number 3 or 4 last night. Like, it's give it a
Yep.
try, just give it a try. I love like, I love like sober October, dry January, like just give it a try. If you've never tried it, or going to an event like this, or connecting with people that aren't drinking, and you meet other people who don't drink, and then it doesn't have to be such a regular part of your life. That's my biggest thing, is my social circle is everything. Like most of my girlfriends that I hang out with now, they don't drink. Some of them just because spiritual beliefs, some of them because they're sober, some of them because I never really cared for drinking, whatever it is. But it's so fun to have people like that in your life. Like I think I told you this before we got started, but I just got back from the Hollywood Bowl last night to go see a comedy show. It's like a night in LA. Didn't get home till like 2 in the morning. I'm hurting today, but not in the way that I would have been hurting back in the day when I was adding drinks to that late night out. And it's like, it's not for my social circle. We have a book club and we meet up and we read books and we hang out. It's like, it's not, most book clubs are like about the wine and not actually the book. And our book club, like nobody drinks. So it's like, it's not about the drinks. It's like going to the comedy show, going out to dinners. It's like, we don't drink. It's like not in my group. And that I cultivated those friendships because I stopped drinking. And then I started connecting more with people that don't drink. And then now that's just my social circle. So now it's actually the norm to not drink. Whereas before, in my old social settings and the people that I was dating and things like that, I was the oddball. I was the weird one who didn't drink. So I think that's the other beauty of these events that you're creating, is you're connecting people to other sober, curious people. And you need community. You really need community in
Hmm.
life, on any journey in life, when it comes to anything you're doing, parenting, business, like anything, you need community around you. But certainly when it comes to sobriety, if you're curious about sobriety and you want to, even dip your toes in the water, it's like you've got to have people around you that are doing that. It's a really hard road if you're not going to surround yourself with people that are also not drinking. It's really tough. So I love what you're creating. I love what you're doing. The last thing I want to ask you is, what advice do you have for somebody out there listening who maybe is struggling with substance abuse, or maybe even questioning, what place those substances have in their life anymore? Somebody who's been started down that journey, and I'm sure it was daunting initially, and now you're on the other side and you have this beautiful life as a result of those choices. Like, what advice could you give to somebody that's peeking down that road and thinking maybe that might be a good path for them?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'd give advice based on my own experience, and I would say set aside everything you think you know and be open-minded, because the moment, like, the first couple of steps for me to even ask for help or just even ask questions, I already started to create, oh well, this person's going to think this or that, and then that would prevent me from asking help. But so by already setting aside what I think I know, because I really don't know much, and the more I act like I don't know anything, the more beautiful my life gets, because I open-minded and stay teachable. So setting aside that, and then just as advice or help or suggestions come your way, or new information, being open-minded to it, because I would say all the things in my life that are so beautiful today that make me happy are things I really am surprised by or didn't expect. So again, like that, setting aside that whole of what I thought I knew was a big part, and then just being open-minded to anything, and like you can't knock it till you try it, and once you try
Totally.
it, then you'll see. And that was my experience for sure.
I love that. And I agree completely. I mentioned I'm almost 2 years in. July will be 2 years of not drinking for me. And it's like the first couple of weeks
Nice.
were
Awesome.
tough, going to events and going to things like that, and, feeling like the odd man out. And then a couple months in, it was like getting easier. And a year in, it was a lot easier. But 2 years in, it's like it's not even a thought in my mind. And I love what you said, like throw everything out that you know. One of my favorite sayings is like, if your cup's already full, then no one can put anything in it. And so my life is always
Hmm.
like dumping my cup out, dumping my cup out, dumping my cup out. Like we learn a lot of things and we think we know things, but it's like so important to empty your cup and be curious and be open about anything. You know, you can't learn anything new if you already know everything. And if you already know everything that you're going to ever
Yeah.
know for the rest of your life, like how boring of a life is that? You know, so being open and being curious, I think is that's such beautiful advice. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for coming on today. This has been an amazing conversation. I think there's a lot of value in this for our listeners. And if they want to connect with you further or find you, how do they do so?
Yeah, they can follow our Instagram. It's at pink7official, just the word pink, the number 7official, or you can just email me directly, and it's brandon@pink7.com. I'm here to help anybody, or if you know anyone that needs help, I am more than happy. I have a whole team of people that are there to help people. And if you're interested in joining the community, we would love to have you. We're continuing to grow. So excited for everything.
Brandon, you're amazing. You're an amazing human, amazing example and testimony. Thank you again for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. You're awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening in. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could leave a review so we can reach more people. I might even share your review on future episodes. If you go to the link in the show notes, you can find and sign up for our newsletter so that you're notified when a new episode comes out. You can support the show by purchasing anything from the Choice Juicery online shop at choicejuicery.com. Or, of course, if you're lucky enough to live in San Diego, you can visit any of our 7 locations here in San Diego and Orange County. And please feel free to connect with me on social media at Nastasha McKeon. That's NASTASHAMCKEON. Don't forget that extra S. Or you can connect with us at the Choice Juicery Instagram at Choice Juicery. Thanks again for listening in.